Well, my name is Ed Wolf, and myself, along with Gary Holmes and Dale Burke, produced the video you're about to see about whitetail hunting, and we hope you enjoy it. We're going to take this opportunity to emphasize some points to watch out for through the video, some things we think are a little extra important. One of the things which Gene Wenzel, who will appear in this film, along with Dick Idle, mentioned to me, which I never thought about, was you got to hunt where there's big bucks. If you want to harvest a 145, 155 buck, you've got to hunt where there are big bucks, and that's kind of an elementary thought that kind of caught me by surprise a few years ago. And where are these big bucks? Saskatchewan and Alberta, Canada have tremendous whitetail bucks. Montana, western Montana, all of Montana, in fact, has got big bucks. In the Yellowstone River bottoms, there's some good ones. The Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, all have good bucks. Missouri's got good bucks, and Texas. And the reason these places do in the Midwest is because there's super feed for them there, and they have an opportunity to get the nutrition that they need to grow big antlers. In Montana's instance, whitetails don't get the pressure. Montana's a real sleeper of a whitetail state. Everybody hunts our premier species like elk and mule deer and bear. And so because of lack of pressure, our bucks here can get to be pretty good size. So keep in mind, if you want to kill a big buck, you got to hunt where the big bucks are. States, for instance, such as Florida, have never produced a book head. So nobody down there is ever going to kill one. So keep that in mind if you want to get a real trophy. If I had to emphasize one particular technique that's more successful than others for taking whitetail bucks, it'd be tree stand hunting. And tree stand hunting gets you above the buck's line of sight. It'll take away his nose most of the time, and it takes away his hearing. So you nullify most of the deer's senses. Tree stand hunting takes patience. You have to place your stand in a site that you have faith in. You have to get out and scout the country, get these game trails analyzed and worked out, movement patterns worked out. And if you don't have confidence in your tree stand, you're going to run out of patience. You're going to want to get down and change. But I'll many times sit all day, and it doesn't bother me in the least. You got to train yourself to do it. But tree stand hunting is absolutely the best way, the best chance to take a big buck. It's the technique that Gene Wenzel, who's renowned whitetail hunter here in western Montana, uses almost exclusively. One of the factors which influences the success of whitetail hunting is the rut, and that's the breeding cycle. Here in western Montana, it occurs from about the 10th of November through Thanksgiving. In Florida, the rut cycle, I believe, is a little later. But during the rut, or the breeding cycle, these bucks get less attentive. They come out during the daylight hours. In fact, ruddy bucks will run all day long. And their guard's down, and the rut is an excellent time to be in the woods, to take advantage of these bucks. And these bigger bucks tend to be very nocturnal, and some of these big bucks won't even come out in the daytime during the rut. But generally speaking, that rutting cycle is an excellent time to get out and try to get a big buck. What actually constitutes a trophy? Of late, in the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a tremendous movement toward commercialism of whitetail deer hunting, and some people are becoming extremely rabid about killing book bucks. That's over 170-point Boone and Crockett animals, and I don't necessarily go along with that. I think a trophy to a meat hunter is a nice fat doe. A trophy to a boy's first deer is a four-corn or a spike even. One of the finest trophies whitetail I ever killed was with my son, and I never fired a shot, but he took a beautiful buck, and it was an experience we shared, and to us that was a trophy. So, it's all in the eyes and mind of the beholder, and wherever you get your satisfaction hunting whitetail, I think is good for you. We hope you enjoy the upcoming program and listen to what Gene and Dick have to say. They know what they're talking about. Each have taken many, many trophies. And good luck, and we hope you enjoy the program.
During the last 3 decades, the popularity and recreational value of whitetail deer has exploded throughout the United States. It is every big game hunter's Alaska, British Columbia, and Africa wrapped into one plentiful, easily accessible species. He is every sportsman's champion. White-tailed deer have been studied and managed intensely during the last 30 years by professional wildlife managers, probably more so than any other species in the world. The whitetail's recovery rests squarely on the shoulders of the sportsman conservationists who were and are willing to bear the costs of such studies and research. We intend to give you a good serving of the meat and potatoes of whitetail deer hunting as presented by some of the nation's top whitetail hunters, including two of the most prominent, Gene Wenzel and Dick Idle. They will present honest, accurate information and recommendations about the art of whitetail deer hunting. Gene Wenzel, who lives in Montana's Bitterroot Valley, is an avid bow hunter and dedicated student of big whitetail bucks. His best buck, a 12 by 12 non-typical, scored a whopping 197 3/8 Pope and Young points. Dick Idle, whose home is in the mountains of west central Montana, is by his own admission a whitetail fanatic. He's currently the field research director for the North American Whitetail magazine. Dick has personally harvested numerous trophy whitetail bucks, and his trophy collection contains the largest heads in the world. The mega trophies truly take your breath away, and are so exceptional we will show you some of them.
The one that you're holding on your left there is a Minnesota head. It's killed by a guy named Raft. It scores 231 non-typical. Next buck here is an Illinois buck that was run over by a car in 1970. And he is, again, a very impressive buck.
Let's discuss some physical characteristics of deer and how they can be applied to the hunting situation. Our discussion will be limited to three areas: the deer's external glandular structure and function, their senses, and antler growth. The unpaired forehead gland is located in the skin of the forehead. By rubbing a sapling with his forehead and antlers, the buck imprints his personal scent on the tree and identifies his physiologic condition to other bucks and does in the area. Understanding the function of these scents enables the smart hunter to predict deer movements. Buck urine and his scrape have important significance to the hunter. A dominant breeding buck will frequently urinate into his scrapes, which then serve as signposts to alert other deer of both sexes as to his dominance and breeding condition. In other words, a buck's scrape serves as a bait, so to speak, for a doe approaching estrus. One important point to remember is that for the scrape urine phenomenon to work, the area must have a high buck-to-doe ratio, and the area must hold a good population of large, mature, breeding bucks. Almost invariably, the sportsman is foiled by a deer's sense of smell or hearing. Nothing occurring in a whitetail's home range goes undetected. It knows every rock, tree, trail, scent pattern, and type of noise. By far, the deer's most powerful sense is that of smell. With its nose, the deer interprets and makes judgments on everything in its environment. Odors never lie. A deer's eyes will often fail him, and sometimes his ears, but never his nose. There is yet one more whitetail characteristic that must be mastered if deer are to be successfully hunted. This characteristic is very important as a communicating media among deer. The observant sportsman can use this habit of deer to gain an edge. It is called body language. Body language is a whitetail's way of showing reaction to what is going on in their environment. Understanding these body positions enable a hunter to anticipate what a deer is feeling at a given time, and perhaps even what its next move will be. Since a buck's behavioral characteristics change drastically during the rut, it is an opportune time to hunt him. It is the period during which a buck's behavior is modified to its greatest extent by breeding activities, and during which time a hunter will have the most success taking advantage of the deer's weakness. There are two types of visual signposts that a breeding buck creates before and during the rutting period. These are the scrape and the rub, both of which must be thoroughly understood if the hunter is to plan a hunt with some purpose. Dick Idle will review with us the meaning of scrapes and rubs.
I pay a lot of attention to especially straight twigs snapped off, because I think it has a lot to do with tine length. Bucks with short tines very seldom break stuff off. It's real interesting, Ed, to when you find these kind of things, because I feel like, especially on a straight one, like this here, you know, where you don't have forks, for a buck to break that, normally you take a buck that's just got normal, straight, small tines and all, he'll push on it and he'll twist it, but if he's got normal spacing on it between his points on his beam, he's going to have a hard time breaking that. And every time I found a lot of this, there's been a real exceptionally long time buck in the area. And what happens when he's in here rubbing, he gets these things in between these points here, and when he twists his head, he can snap them off. But on short tines, that thing will slip out between the tines, and he won't break them. And I pay a lot of attention to rub densities. And we ought to just, so people understand what a rub density is, we probably ought to start counting some of these so you can actually see how many's in a specific area. This is really interesting. You can see all these gouge marks back here, all the way down into here. A buck that does this, it shows he's got a good size rack on him. Now, generally, I found it means that he often has long tines. It's got the ideal conditions here. You've got a meadow and thick cover all around the border. You got evergreens, and you got security, you got feed, you got everything right here. They really prefer these fringe areas right here.
There are certain record-class bucks that will score over 170 Boone and Crockett points and which will never show themselves for any reason, doe in heat or not. They are hyper-cautious and super reclusive. And that may be why each of us keeps the fire in our gut burning. Maybe one cold November day we'll catch him in a compromised situation. How are whitetail hunted? What common denominators are there? We are now going to show you, under authentic hunting situations, the 4 best techniques to take whitetail deer. These are deer drives, horn rattling, still hunting, tree stand hunting. Drive hunting must involve a minimum of 2 hunters and up to as many as 6. The idea is simply to have the drivers walk through an area known to hold deer and attempt to push the spooked deer past one or more hunters. This hunter, looking for a trophy, allows this small buck to pass. Deer can appear suddenly and unexpectedly, sometimes so shaking the hunter he misses. Antler rattling as a hunting method has come into vogue in recent times. Rattling may be defined as a mimicry of 2 bucks fighting with the thought of luring a 3rd buck into shooting range. Gene Wenzel will discuss the techniques with us.
Essentially, rattling is calling, and it's no different than calling elk, calling coyotes, calling ducks. It's a calling technique. Anyways, basically, there's numerous factors or several factors that have to you have to take into consideration when you are rattling. First of all, the buck-to-doe ratio is very important. And this is probably more important than anything. You have to have competition among mature bucks. The first initial clash there, again, I've never timed it. I usually do the first sequence probably 45 seconds to a minute. If I had to time it, it'd be somewhere in there, 45 seconds to a minute. Anyway, bang them together like that, initial clash, then and you go on.
About 45
you go on for that for about 45 seconds. Anyway, you want to make it as aggressive and as action-oriented as you can the first time.
Still hunting is hunting in the purest form. It is a solo sport, and, in a way, still hunting done well is an expression of an individual's personality and his appreciation of a total outdoor experience. White-tailed deer are probably the most difficult big game species in the world to still hunt. But taking a mature buck this way is a very rewarding experience. Still hunting may be defined as a method of hunting by which the hunter attempts to move through an area as quietly and unobtrusively as possible while maintaining a razor's edge of alertness in order to spot game before he himself is detected. This sportsman was skilled enough still hunter to collect his buck despite the forest floor being covered with dry, crackly leaves. He used his eyes and brain to read the sign and thus overcome the buck's superior ears and nose. Moving slowly is another key. Depending on conditions, moving quietly ahead for 2 minutes and standing looking for 10 to 12 minutes may be necessary. One should move ahead only when every particle of real estate has been examined within visual limits. Tree stand hunting is the most effective way to harvest white-tailed deer, particularly the bigger, craftier bucks. Why is this so? One reason is white-tailed deer, if not unduly disturbed, are predictable, using the same bedding, feeding, and travel lanes day after day. Therefore, a stand can be set up after studying the situation, and the deer can be caught making his round. Gene will now review some of the finer points of tree stand hunting.
Okay, Gary, when you do place a tree stand, you get the platform exactly where you want. You want to keep in mind game movement patterns. You want to keep in mind your shot opportunities. You want to keep in mind that try and place, if possible, an ideal situation is where you have the wind going with you. In other words, you're playing the wind as far as game movement, and also if you can keep knowing where the game should be, if you can keep the sun behind you, it's a big advantage. My tree stand height is usually, my platform height from the platform to the ground averages about, I've been getting higher every year, and it's probably 18 feet now. The advantages of a tree stand, first of all, you're out of their normal line of sight, the level of sight. They will look up, like I said, but normally their eyes will scan ground level. Secondly, your scent is up higher, where your scent usually blows over top of the deer.
Let's accompany Gene on an early morning hunt in Montana's Bitterroot Valley. Gene had thoroughly scouted the area. He knew the deer would gather in a stand of cottonwoods before crossing the river to feed in an alfalfa field. His stand is placed so the deer would cross beneath it. Gene remains motionless as the herd emerges from the river. He draws his bow when the buck drops his head. After hitting the buck, Gene waited for an hour before beginning to track him.
Normally much more of an open
In a second situation, Paul Brunner harvests a spike buck to eliminate this inferior animal from his herd.
Really super good whitetail bit.
Paul has placed his stand about 18 feet up a large ponderosa pine overlooking an area commonly used as a feeding site by the spike. Paul patiently waits as the spike moves in. Even though the spike looks up, it fails to recognize Paul as danger. Paul draws.
Well, it looks like he's down. He's done for. A little spike and his one horn is broken off. There's just a tiny little piece of it right left.
A slight variation of the tree stand is a ground stand. In this situation, the hunter chooses a vantage point at ground level, where he suspects a deer will pass or come to feed. Wind strength and direction is much more critical here than in a tree stand. For several evenings, Rob Hazelwood has watched two good bucks follow a group of does to feed in an alfalfa field. His plan is to place himself at a vantage point before the deer leave the willow cover to feed. His shot will be about 250 yards. Finally, a dominant buck comes in and scatters the does as he checks their state of estrus. Rob, from his resting position, takes careful aim at the largest buck. The buck is hit. And separates himself from the others as he bolts for cover.
This is a real good example of a mature 5-point whitetail buck. He's fairly even. He's got a little bit of deduction on this side here. The main beam isn't quite as long, and as you can see, the last tine here is a little bit longer than this tine, so he'd lose a little.
The previous hunting scene was filmed on a ranch in central Montana that Rob manages for Big Buck Production. He will share some thoughts with us about that.
We do game cropping through legal harvest by harvesting does and also some of our smaller bucks. Well, there she is, Scott.
Oh, yeah.
That's a nice big adult doe.
Yeah,
Excellent.
look, there's where I hit her.
Yeah, you made a very good shot right there.
Right in the chest there.
Good going. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Harvesting does is an important element in Rob's management program.
About how old do you think she is, Rob?
I don't know. Let's have a look here. The way you age these things, Gary, is looking at their lower jaw.
Yeah.
And checking out the tooth wear and the amount of staining.
What teeth?
That's exactly right.
She didn't have hardly any left.
This doe hardly has any teeth. Her teeth are just worn down. She's a real old doe. I'd say maybe 9 or 10 years old. She's pretty much served her purpose. And really, right now, it'd just be competing against the younger deer coming up. And so this is a good one to harvest. You made a nice shot.
No matter where you hunt, being able to interpret what you see is the backbone of successful whitetail deer hunting. It takes a commitment of time and practice, but will eventually bring success. Gene Wenzel presents an interesting theory about successful whitetail hunting. He said that to be the consummate whitetail deer hunter, we must begin to think and act like a predator. We must fine-tune our senses, such as eyes, ears, and smell. And most importantly, we must learn everything we can about how our prey behaves and use our superior intellect to outsmart him. Good hunting. Stony Wolf Video, a pioneer and leader in outdoor video production, now introduces to you its complete line of hunting, fishing, and nature programs. Their unique format will not only acquaint you with the species itself, but will also teach you effective hunting and fishing techniques, as well as provide an understanding of wildlife resource management. The birds, fish, and big game species are harvested in actual field condition by hunters and fishermen who are acknowledged experts in their respective fields. You relive each outdoor experience with your own eyes as it occurred. Careful study of these videos will provide you with many hours of enjoyment, as well as leave you with the knowledge that will make you a better hunter and fisherman. The programs are tastefully done and are suitable for family entertainment. Stony Wolf Video's production standards are a cut above the norm.